I never thought a simple day at the park with my dog could make me feel so alive. So desired. It was a moment I didn't expect, a moment that made me crave something I had been missing for so long. My name is Amelia, and I've been married to Daniel for 6 years. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been ours. We met when we were both still figuring out life, and from the beginning, there was something special between us. But over the years, life's demands started to weigh on us. Daniel works long hours at his job, often coming home late, exhausted, and preoccupied with the pressures of his career. And me? I've got my own commitments, housework, errands, and trying to balance everything, including keeping up with our busy lives. Somewhere along the way, we stopped making time for each other. We stopped talking the way we used to, stopped making the effort to connect in the small, meaningful ways that once made our relationship so strong. I'm not blaming him, he's a good man, hardworking and dedicated. But we were both so caught up in the routine, so wrapped up in everything else, that I couldn't remember the last time we'd shared a quiet moment together, just the two of us. That's when I decided I needed a break. A moment to step away from it all, to remind myself of the things I'd been missing. I needed some time to reconnect with myself, and with the life I had before all the responsibilities piled up. I grabbed Finn, my dog, and headed to the park. Just me and him, no distractions, no pressures. I needed peace, even if just for a little while. I decided to take my dog, Finn, to the park. It was a simple plan, just me, him, and a picnic blanket under the shade of an old oak tree. The park was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that only comes when the world feels still. The air was warm but not too hot, and there was a soft breeze that rustled the leaves above, creating a gentle, almost soothing sound. I could hear the distant chirping of birds, but otherwise, everything was calm. Finn, my loyal companion, trotted along beside me, his tail wagging in his usual carefree way. We reached our spot under the oak tree, and I spread out the blanket, smoothing it out over the soft grass. Finn immediately plopped down next to me, his head resting on his paws, his eyes content and trusting. He's been my constant companion for years, always by my side, always there when I needed comfort or just someone to be with. I leaned back on the blanket, letting the sun filter through the branches above, casting soft, dappled light across the ground. The shadows danced gently on the grass, and I closed my eyes for a moment, just soaking in the peacefulness of it all. The weight of the world seemed to lift off my shoulders, if only for a little while. I thought this was just going to be another quiet afternoon, a chance to breathe and forget about everything. But then Finn did something unexpected. He nudged me gently with his nose, his warm, soft fur brushing against my skin. I looked down at him, and for a moment, I was caught off guard by the intensity of the feeling that rushed through me, something I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. Finn had been running around, chasing after sticks, darting through the tall grass with his usual playful energy. I watched him, laughing to myself as he rolled around, his ears flopping with every excited movement. But then, something changed. He suddenly slowed down, his pace growing more deliberate. It was as if he could sense that the mood had shifted. The air seemed quieter, the breeze a little softer. Finn stopped running, his head turned back towards me, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that caught me off guard. He trotted over slowly, as if he were trying to understand something I couldn't put into words. He didn't jump up on me like he usually did after a chase, eager to be petted or play. Instead, he gently laid down beside me, curling up in the grass with a soft sigh. But then, without warning, he leaned in closer, resting his head on my lap, his warm, soft fur brushing against my skin. The sensation of his body against mine was comforting, yet it stirred something deep inside me, something I hadn't realized I was missing. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. It wasn't unusual for Finn to seek out affection, but this felt different. There was a quiet intimacy in the way he settled against me, his body warm and solid against my legs. It made me feel good between my legs. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I felt as though he was trying to communicate something without words. It was like he knew I needed comfort, something more than just the peace of the park, something more than the stillness of the day. I ran my fingers gently through his fur, the sensation grounding me, yet at the same time, it triggered something unexpected. As his warm body rested on my lap, I felt a deep connection, a tenderness that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just the touch of his fur, it was the feeling of being wanted, needed, and understood. Finn wasn't just a dog to me, he was a companion, a reminder that I wasn't alone. And in that moment, I felt it. That subtle, unspoken message he was giving me, you're not alone. For the first time in a long time, I realized how much I had been craving that feeling of connection, that sense of being desired and cared for. It was a feeling I hadn't even known I was missing. The weight of everything, my marriage, my responsibilities, seemed to fade away, replaced by something more raw, more real. And as I sat there, with Finn's head resting on my lap, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the comfort I had been longing for all along? Or was it something more? As I sat there, feeling Finn's warmth against me, my thoughts began to wander, and before I knew it, I was lost in memories of Daniel. I thought about how things used to be between us, how effortlessly we connected in those early days of our relationship. It wasn't just the big moments, the trips, the celebrations, but the small, intimate things that made me feel truly loved. I remembered the way Daniel would look at me, his gaze full of warmth and desire. It wasn't just admiration, it was a look that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. The way his eyes would soften when they met mine, as if he was seeing me in a way no one else could. That look would send a shiver down my spine, and I could feel the pull of his desire, the magnetic energy that made me feel wanted in the most intimate way. I could still feel the softness of his touch, the way his hands would caress my skin like he was memorizing every inch of me. I remember how he would pull me close after a long day, his body pressed against mine, and I'd feel his heartbeat against my chest. The heat between us would ignite something deep inside, and I'd melt into his embrace, feeling safe and cherished. There was a kind of intimacy in those moments that went beyond the physical. It was the connection we shared, the way our bodies seemed to fit together so perfectly, as if we were made for each other. I could hear his voice in my mind, low and soothing, as he whispered sweet things in my ear. I missed you, he'd say, and I'd feel a rush of warmth spread through me. His words were like a balm, healing the stresses of the day, and the way he'd press his lips against my forehead after those words would make me feel like I was the center of his world. I could feel the longing in his touch, the way he'd hold me just a little tighter, as if he never wanted to let me go, and then there were the nights. The quiet, intimate moments when we'd lie in bed, tangled in each other's arms. The way Daniel would run his fingers through my hair, tracing the contours of my face, memorizing the feel of me. His kisses would start soft, gentle, but soon they'd become more urgent, more desperate, as if he couldn't get enough of me. I remember how he'd kiss my neck, his lips leaving a trail of heat that would send shivers down my spine. It wasn't just the physical closeness, it was the emotional intimacy, the way we'd share our fears, our dreams, and our deepest desires, without saying a word. But somewhere along the way, those moments became fewer and farther between. Life happened. The demands of work, the responsibilities of daily life, and the exhaustion of simply getting through the day started to take over. The passionate kisses turned into quick pecks on the cheek, the long conversations into passing words. The intimacy we once shared seemed to fade into the background, replaced by routine and familiarity. As I sat there with Finn, his warm body resting against me, I felt a pang of longing. I missed the way Daniel used to look at me, the way his touch would send sparks through my body, the way he'd make me feel like I was the only woman in the world. I missed the closeness, the way we'd lose ourselves in each other, in the simple act of being together. I hadn't realized how much I had missed that intimacy, that deep connection, until now. In the quiet of the park, with Finn's head resting on my lap, I felt a yearning that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the physical touch, although I missed that too. It was the emotional closeness, the way Daniel used to make me feel desired, wanted, and loved in a way that no one else ever could. I felt the ache in my chest, the longing for something that seemed so far out of reach. The years had passed, and so much had changed. But in that moment, with Finn's warmth grounding me in the present, I realized how much I longed for those days when Daniel and I were lost in each other, when our connection was undeniable and strong. I missed feeling that alive, that desired. And now, I couldn't help but wonder. Could we ever find our way back to that intimacy, or had we drifted too far apart? Sitting there with Finn's head resting on my lap, I felt a quiet stillness. The park around me was peaceful, birds chirping, the breeze rustling through the trees, but it was my own thoughts that consumed me. As I stroked Finn's fur, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just that I missed Daniel's touch or the way we used to laugh together, it was the realization that I had stopped nurturing the connection we once shared. Life had slowly taken over. The demands of work, responsibilities, and everything else had pushed aside the moments that used to make us feel close. I had let the intimacy slip, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't make time for it. I had stopped prioritizing us. The quiet dinners, the tender touches, the shared moments that once brought us closer, those had faded into the background. In that moment, I understood something important. It wasn't just about missing what we had, it was about the fact that I had stopped trying to keep it alive. I had waited for things to change on their own, but I realized that if I wanted that connection back, I had to take action. The realization hit me like a wave. I wasn't ready to let our love become a memory. I needed to fight for it. I needed to put in the effort to reconnect with Daniel and bring back the spark we had once shared. It wasn't going to be easy, and I didn't know exactly how, but I promised myself that I would no longer wait for change to come on its own. I stood up, feeling a surge of determination. It was time to stop waiting for the perfect moment. The moment was now. I was going to do everything I could to make sure Daniel and I found our way back to each other. When Daniel came home that night, I didn't wait. I didn't let the moment slip by. As soon as he walked through the door, I went straight to him, wrapping my arms around him in a tight embrace. It had been so long since I held him like that, really held him, without the distractions of life between us. At first, he was surprised, but then he held me back, pulling me closer. His arms felt familiar, like coming home. I could feel the warmth of his body and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. It was the kind of closeness I had been craving, but hadn't realized how much until that moment. I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "I've missed you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I've missed us." Daniel's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the vulnerability I had once fallen in love with. "I've missed you too," he said quietly. We didn't need to say much more. I shared how I had been feeling, how I'd let the intimacy slip away without even noticing, how I longed for the connection we once had. He listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he told me he'd noticed the distance too, but hadn't known how to close the gap. We laughed, not because anything was funny, but because it felt so good to finally be honest. To finally be real with each other. We talked about the future, about making time for each other again, and how we could keep the intimacy alive. That night, we stayed up late, talking and rediscovering each other. There was no rush, no pressure, just us, reconnecting. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that spark again, that deep connection. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. As we finally drifted off to sleep, side by side, I knew this was the beginning of something new. A chapter where we would never let life get in the way of our love again. That picnic with Finn wasn't just about a quiet afternoon in the park. It wasn't about the peacefulness of the trees or the cool breeze on my skin. It was a wake-up call. A moment that made me realize how far I had drifted from the person I used to be. The person who knew how to love and cherish the small, simple moments with the one I cared about most. Sitting there with Finn, I felt something stir inside me, something I had forgotten in the rush of daily life. It wasn't just the absence of intimacy or the physical closeness I missed, it was the deeper connection, the emotional bond that had once been so effortless. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I couldn't let my love for Daniel fade into the background, not when it still meant so much to me. Sometimes, it's the smallest moments that bring us back to what really matters. It's easy to get lost in the chaos, to let responsibilities and distractions take over. But those moments, those quiet, unexpected moments, remind us of the things we truly need. And for me, that picnic with Finn was the first step toward rekindling the love I had almost forgotten. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: love isn't something that just happens. It's something we have to work for, something we have to nurture. And with Daniel, I'm ready to put in the effort again. To cherish the moments, to make time for us, and to never let go of what we've built together. Have you ever had a moment that made you realize what you've been missing in your life? Maybe it was a quiet afternoon, a simple gesture, or a conversation that brought you back to what truly matters. I'd love to hear your story. How did you reconnect with someone important to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and felt the connection, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more heartfelt stories with you.